Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready to dive in?
Always.
Awesome. Today we are looking at whole body electromyostimulation.
Or WB-EMS, as I'm sure most people know it.
Right, WB-EMS. So we're talking about those suits, hooking yourself up to a machine, and bam!
Electrodes all over your body making your muscles work.
Yeah, like a futuristic zapping workout. And we're going to figure out if it lives up to the hype.
Exactly, and the hype is real.
Right, for sure. But we're going to cut through all of that, look at the science.
All the science. We're diving into a big review study from Frontiers in Physiology.
Love it when we get juicy research like that. So, to be clear, this isn't about elite athletes, right?
Not this time.
Good, because I am not an elite athlete.
This deep dive is for everyone. For people like you, for me, just everyday people.
People who maybe struggle to fit exercise into their busy lives.
Especially them. Although, to be honest, we all know exercise is essential, right?
Oh yeah, can't argue with that. Gotta move that body.
Exactly. But the sad truth is that chronic diseases are becoming more and more common.
Especially here in the West, it seems.
The stats really drive it home. The Robert Koch Institute found over two-thirds.
Two-thirds?
Yeah. Two-thirds of Germans over 50 are dealing with multiple chronic diseases at the same time.
Wow.
More than 20% of them have 5 or more chronic conditions. 5.
And that's where exercise should come in, right?
It's the best medicine. But so many people just struggle to make it a part of their routine.
Okay, so that's where this WB-EMS thing comes in. Like it's this quick fix, a shortcut to being healthy.
Well, not a quick fix, but it could be a helpful tool.
A tool, okay.
It could be a good option for those who struggle with traditional exercise for whatever reason.
So remind us again, how does WB-EMS actually work? It's like it makes your muscles contract, but you're not actually like, working out.
You are working out. It just uses electrical stimulation to make those muscles contract.
Okay, so I'm still working out just with a little electrical help.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that it can activate multiple muscle groups simultaneously.
Not once.
All at once. Which means you could theoretically get a really efficient workout in a shorter amount of time.
Okay, now that you mention it, I have seen ads that make it sound like, 20 minutes of this is like 3 hours in the gym.
Right. But we need to look at what the science says.
Exactly. That's why we're here.
This review we're looking at focuses on low-frequency WB-EMS, by the way.
Low frequency?
Yeah, it's the type that's most commonly used commercially. It operates at around 80 to 85 hertz. There's also middle frequency, but we'll get into that a bit later.
Okay, so low frequency WB-EMS, that's our focus. They hooked people up to these machines, and then what? Did they make them do jumping jacks? What's the deal?
Well, first, we have to understand how they evaluated this whole thing.
Good point. We don't just want anecdotes. We want the hard data.
Right. They did a systematic review, which basically means they gathered all the best available evidence on the topic.
Okay, so like a thorough research roundup.
Exactly. They went through tons of studies from all these different databases, PubMed, Scopus, you name it, using keywords like whole body electromyostimulation, muscle mass, all the relevant terms.
So they weren't messing around. They were looking for real answers.
They were serious. And importantly, they specifically focused on studies that involved non-athletic adults.
Which makes sense for our purposes, right? We want to know if this is something that could benefit, like your average person.
Yeah.
Okay, so they had their research mountain, all those studies. They knew who they were looking at. But what exactly were they hoping to find? What were the big questions?
So they were looking at several key things. First, they wanted to know if WB-EMS could actually improve those musculoskeletal risk factors, things like bone mineral density.
Important stuff, especially as we age.
Exactly. Second, they were curious about functional capacity. Could WB-EMS make you stronger and improve your endurance?
So not just looking buff, but actually being able to, lift those grocery bags with ease?
Precisely. They also looked at its impact on what we call cardiometabolic risk factors. Things like body fat, blood pressure, all those things that play a role in heart health.
Big ones. So they were really trying to see if this could positively impact overall health, not just build bigger biceps.
Exactly. And of course, they were also looking at any potential downsides or risks, because with any intervention, there's always that possibility.
Okay, so they had their questions, they've gathered their research. What did they actually find? Was it all sunshine and roses, or were there some surprises?
Well, I'd say the findings were a mixed bag, which, to be honest, is often the case with new areas of health and wellness research. There wasn't one massive, groundbreaking discovery that changed everything.
Okay, so no magic bullet.
Not quite. But there were some really interesting findings, some promising leads.
Ooh, I love promising leads. Give me the highlights. What kind of interesting findings are we talking about?
One of the most consistent findings was that WB-EMS seemed to lead to an increase in lean body mass, and this was especially true for older adults.
Interesting. That's definitely something to pay attention to, especially as we age and naturally tend to lose muscle mass.
Right. But there is a bit of a caveat. The research isn't super clear yet on whether this increased muscle mass actually translates to noticeable improvements in functional strength for everyday activities.
So it might make your muscles look good, but we don't know for sure if it'll make carrying those groceries any easier.
Exactly. It needs a bit more investigation.
More research is always needed. It's a never-ending quest. Okay, so we need to figure out how that muscle gain translates into real-life activities. But what about pain? I've heard some buzz about WB-EMS being good for people with lower back pain. Anything there?
There is. And this is where things get especially interesting with that middle frequency WB-EMS I mentioned earlier.
Oh, right. You teased that before. What's the difference between low and middle frequency?
So as we discussed, low frequency operates at around 80 to 85 hertz. Middle frequency WB-EMS is a bit higher, usually around 2,000 hertz.
2,000, that's quite a jump.
It is. And it's thought to penetrate deeper into the muscle tissue, which might be why some research suggests it could be even more effective for reducing chronic pain, particularly lower back pain.
Fascinating. So 2 options, potentially for different needs, different levels of pain relief.
Potentially, but we need to be cautious here. Middle frequency WB-EMS is relatively new on the scene.
Makes sense.
So we don't have as much research on it compared to the low frequency type.
So we need more data. But what about the low frequency one and its effect on lower back pain? What did they find in the review?
Well, they looked at a bunch of studies, and several showed some really positive effects of low frequency WB-EMS on chronic, non-specific lower back pain. In fact, one study reported an 89% improvement rate.
89%. Now that's what I call a result.
Right. Pretty impressive. However, and this is super important, there were also studies that showed mixed results.
Ah, the dreaded mixed results. Always throws a wrench in things.
It does. While it might help, we can't say for sure that it's a guaranteed fix for back pain. We need more high-quality research to really confirm its effectiveness.
So promising, but not a magic bullet for back pain just yet.
Got it.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential benefits, muscle building, maybe some pain management, but what about heart health and all those other factors you mentioned earlier? Did it help people lose weight, lower their blood pressure, that sort of thing?
Well, that's where things get a little more complex. The research on those cardiometabolic effects is still a bit all over the place. Some studies showed some improvements in blood pressure, body fat, those kinds of things, but then other studies found absolutely no benefit.
Oh, interesting. So no clear consensus yet.
Not quite. And to make things even more interesting, one study found that low-frequency WB-EMS actually reduced visceral fat in men.
Visceral fat, that's the dangerous kind that wraps around your organs.
Exactly. But the interesting thing was, this reduction in visceral fat was only observed in men, not in women who participated in the study.
That is fascinating. Okay, so we've got potential benefits, but it's not all clear-cut. But let's talk about the elephant in the room we're talking about. Sending electrical currents through your muscles. There have to be some risks involved, right?
Right. It's electricity, so of course there are risks.
Right.
Like with anything that impacts your health, you have to be aware of the potential downsides.
Okay, so no sweeping it under the rug. Let's talk about these risks. What are we talking about here?
So one of the more serious, although rare risks, is something called rhabdomyolysis.
Rhabdomyolysis. Okay, I'm going to need you to break that one down for me. That sounds kind of scary.
It can be, but it's very rare with WB-EMS, thankfully. Rhabdomyolysis, it basically happens when muscle tissue breaks down and releases substances into your bloodstream.
Okay.
And those substances can be hard on your kidneys.
And kidneys are important. We only get 2.
Exactly. And in extreme cases, it could even lead to kidney failure.
Okay, definitely not something to mess around with. So how can people make sure they're staying safe, minimizing these risks?
This is where those qualified professionals come in.
Our favorite people.
Right. They can make sure that the WB-EMS protocol, so that's the intensity, the duration, the frequency of your sessions is right for you, for your fitness level, for your goals.
Makes sense.
It's all about personalization. And interestingly, the review found that the risk of rhabdomyolysis was actually higher in people who are new to WB-EMS, especially during those initial sessions.
So start slow, listen to your body.
Exactly. Just like you wouldn't start a new workout routine by immediately lifting the heaviest weights. right?
Absolutely not. My back hurts just thinking about it.
Exactly. So ease into it, listen to your body.
Mm.
Now, besides that rare rhabdomyolysis risk, most people experience the usual suspects after a WB-EMS session. Muscle soreness, a little bit of fatigue, just like after a traditional workout. Nothing out of the ordinary. And it's usually temporary.
Okay, good to know. And I've heard some people mention skin irritation from those electrodes.
Right, some people experience that. But it's typically manageable with proper hygiene, making sure those electrodes are placed correctly.
Okay, so manageable risks. We've got the lowdown on those. We've talked about the potential benefits, muscle building, some pain management, maybe even a little heart health boost. But I'm curious, what do people actually DO while they're hooked up to these electrodes? Like, are we talking about, like, running on a treadmill while being zapped? Paint me a picture.
Well, that's interesting. It can really vary. Some studies had people doing more dynamic movements while hooked up to the WB-EMS, things like squats, lunges, crunches.
So, like, actually moving those muscles.
Yes, while others focused on isometric exercises, so that's where you're holding a static pose, like a plank, for example.
Oh, so you're holding that plank, but then your muscles are also getting zapped at the same time?
Exactly. Adds a whole new level of challenge.
I bet it does.
And then some studies even combine WB-EMS with other activities like cardio or resistance training.
Interesting. So it's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of workout.
Exactly. It can be personalized, just like any other exercise program.
Which, again, highlights why working with that qualified professional is so important.
Absolutely. They can tailor a program specifically for you, your needs, your goals, any limitations you might have. It's all about finding what works best for you.
I love that. So for someone listening right now, maybe they're thinking, okay, this WB-EMS thing, it's piqued my interest. Maybe it's something I should check out. What advice would you give them? Where do they even begin?
It's great to be curious.
Right.
Right. And it's always good to explore new ways to improve your health and wellness. But I'd say the first step is simple. Talk to your doctor.
Always good advice.
Right. They know your medical history, they can assess your overall health, and really determine if WB-EMS is appropriate for you, especially if you have any pre-existing medical conditions.
Yeah, gotta get that medical professional's opinion before you start strapping electrodes to yourself. Safety first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And once you've gotten the green light from your doctor, then the next step would be to find a qualified WB-EMS professional.
Don't just Google WB-EMS near me and call it a day.
Exactly. Don't just waltz into any gym that offers it. Do your research. Look for someone who's certified, experienced, ideally with a proven track record of working with people your age, people with similar fitness levels.
And don't be afraid to ask questions.
Please ask questions. A good WB-EMS professional should be happy to walk you through everything, address any concerns, make sure you feel comfortable and confident.
Yes, they should be a partner in your wellness journey, not just someone slapping on electrodes and pressing a button.
Precisely. It's a collaboration. Okay, so we've talked about what WB-EMS is, why it might be interesting, how it works. We've gone through those benefits, talked about those important safety concerns, how to find a qualified professional. But before we wrap up, I'm curious, were there any other surprising or unexpected nuggets of information from this review that really stood out to you?
You know, one thing that really jumped out at me was how much of an impact WB-EMS seemed to have on muscle mass in older adults.
Oh, really?
Compared to younger folks, yeah.
Like, it really made me think. Because we know as we age, muscle mass naturally declines.
Right, it's all downhill after 25.
And that could lead to a whole bunch of other issues, right? Increased risk of falls, less mobility.
Yeah, not being able to keep up with the grandkids.
Exactly. So it makes you wonder if WB-EMS could be, a potential tool to combat that.
Like a secret weapon against age-related decline.
Maybe. I mean, more research is definitely needed.
Of course, there's always more research to be done.
But the findings so far are definitely promising.
That's really interesting.
Because maintaining muscle mass, it's crucial for healthy aging, right?
Oh.
It's not just about, looking good. It's about being able to live your life to the fullest, stay active, stay independent as you get older.
That's what I love about these deep dives.
What's that?
We start with something that seems, kind of simple, like, oh, let's hook some electrodes up to ourselves and flex.
Right.
And then we end up with these, way broader insights into health and aging and how our bodies work.
It's true. It's all connected.
It's fascinating.
It really highlights how interconnected our bodies are. Like, we can't just focus on one aspect of our health and expect everything else to just fall into place, right?
Right. It's all a balancing act. So for our listeners out there who are now maybe thinking, okay, this WB-EMS thing, it's got some potential, maybe I should give it a shot. What's your final piece of advice to them?
I'd say if you're intrigued, do your research.
Always good advice.
And don't just, jump in blindly. We talked about this. Talk to your doctor, get their expert opinion, make sure it actually aligns with your health needs, your goals. And of course, if you get the go-ahead, work with a qualified professional.
Seriously, folks, don't skip that step. Finding that certified, experienced professional, that can make all the difference. They're going to be able to guide you, ensure your safety, help you achieve those fitness goals. It's worth it.
It really is. Knowledge is power. Right.
Always. Okay, so we've explored this exciting world of WB-EMS, talked about those potential benefits, those risks, how to find a qualified professional if you're interested in trying it out.
It's been a great deep dive.
It really has. So for our listeners, if you want to learn more about WB-EMS, we'll be sure to include some resources in the show notes.
Yeah, check those out.
And until our next deep dive, keep those brains engaged, those bodies moving, and those questions coming. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.